Hi, welcome back to another edition of Relatable. I am your host, Stephanie Michele. This is the show where we talk about exceptional human encounters, the people who make them happen and the actions that it takes to create them. So we've been on a break for a couple weeks, and I was really wanting to share some amazing inspiration and be super uplifting at the beginning of this show. And I do have some inspiration for everybody, but I got to share a story of how I got there, and it's not so inspirational. So I don't know if you've heard me say this before, but I think we've talked about it. In 2015, I wrote an article for the Huffington Post about being catfished on a dating site. And the reason that I decided to share the story was I knew that people, would comment on somebody's catfishing story online and be really mean and say, how could you be so stupid? And I wanted to share a story and say, look, this is something that's happening all the time, and it's very easy to happen because there are stats out there right now about dating apps that say half of the profiles that you're interacting with, if you're on them, are fake. They are lying in some way. So the chances of you being in some sort of situation where someone's not very honest are pretty high. So I shared that story in 2015, okay? It's 2019 right now. I just want to remind everybody this so you see where I'm going. With that story, I created this website called No Text or Next. And basically what it was a pledge to just think about how you're using instant messaging, how we've allowed that to be the major form of communication between all of our interactions. So I created a pledge and said, look, I don't blame the dating app, I don't blame the person, but I do blame the idea that we've allowed this instant messaging to be the form that we use for all communication. I wanted to encourage people to just think about it, just think about what you're doing with instant messaging. So No Text or Next is a site you can go and take this pledge. And I didn't know at the time, I was really in the healing process of that traumatic experience of my vulnerable catfish story and sharing that online and sharing No Text Next. And so I promoted it for a little bit, and then I stopped promoting it. And what was cool about it is people from all over the world to this day have taken that pledge. And they've told me their stories. And some have actually reached out personally and said in the moment that they're still going through it, go, God, help me. What would you do? This is my situation. And thankfully, even after those moments, I've heard from people that they've gotten past their trauma and past that moment and onto a healing process and doing really well. And I've heard those stories too. So the whole process of sharing it online and where the story is today is really meaningful to me and a big part of my life, even though nobody knows that I answer these emails all the time, through No Text or Next. So when I was approached, while on break, I was approached by an online publication that said, we want you to tell your story for our publication. And I said, okay, well, that story already exists online, what happened in 2015, but I can tell you where I am right now with the story. I can do a follow-up piece. So I did that, and the editor didn't like my story. She wasn't interested in the health and well-being or anything that happened after that. And she insisted that I put more details from the 2015 incident in the story. And I said, I'm not really comfortable with that. That's not my story right now. That's not where I am right now. And this feels very sensationalized. And I don't want to put that kind of content out for the sake of entertainment or for someone to bond over my traumatic experience that doesn't exist to this day because it's not where I am. But she did it anyway. So she took 80% of what was in the original story and about 20% of what I wrote, pieced it together in a way that it sounded like I was still in the trauma to this day and that it just happened, and publicized it without my approval. And I, of course, was furious. It was not my story. Anybody that knows me and knows how I talk about relational nutrition and would know that I would not be holding that moment in time to this day. I'm way beyond it. And I was really upset. And when I read it, it was told in such a way that the only thing that could happen when a reader read that story is just feel a tremendous amount of anxiety. That is not the kind of energy that I want to put out in the world. So I share this with you, and I'm not going to say the name of the publication, though I really want to, but I don't believe in calling them out. And they're not here to defend themselves. And I will say, even though this editor was it was a horrific experience, she violated my time, she violated my trust, and she violated my story. The actual owner of this publication did get on the phone with me and hear why I was upset, and they did take it down. So I, 50-50 on how I feel about this brand still. But why I share all this is I just want to remind everybody that your story is you, and that you should love your story and you should protect your story. And you might be wondering, Stephanie, well, how do I do that? What do you mean when I say protect my story? And I think the more important question is with who. I think that we need to look at who do we keep near us? Who do we tell and share and protect our stories? Like, how do we do this with each other? And the more I dive into wellness research and relational data, the more I realize how important it is to cultivate a small group of people, a small community of people that they're your ride or die people. They know who you are. They're there for you. They want to grow with you. No amounts of online interaction can provide the relational nutrition that we need and that we can get from close relationships. We need people that support us and challenge us, because challenges help us grow, and that's a big part of just learning. So over the next weeks, I know for sure you're going to hear me talk more about finding and cultivating a small group of people who are committed to growing with you. Something got birthed over this break, and I will be sharing that, and it's definitely about trending towards small private groups, and you're definitely going to be hearing about that. In the meantime, if you're watching live right now, here's a question for chat to kind of think about. When you need to vent about an issue you're having, do you, A, want people to agree with everything that you say, B, want people to offer up new insight, or C, a little bit of both? That's your question to talk about. Now, I know my guest today carries a considerable amount of knowledge about developing and learning in the group dynamics and really supporting each other in group dynamics and so much more. So I know you're going to have something to say about what I just shared. So joining me today is Ann Bradley. She is the founder and director of Radical Aliveness Institute. Does that sound amazing? Radical Aliveness. Yes, please. It's a model that has a distinct approach to working with groups and individuals that addresses healing on a personal, interpersonal, and systematic level. Radical Aliveness Institute's mission is to train committed individuals to be courageous leaders and influential change agents, acting with flexibility and sensitivity in any environment. I love that phrase, and I'm so going to be asking you more about it. To come alive in their authentic selves and awaken their radical, alive leader with them. Ann leads workshops throughout the year at retreat centers, including Esalen, Omega, Hollyhock, and as well as 2 to 4 year programs at the Radical Aliveness Institute. She teaches and conducts training internationally. She travels a lot. You're going to hear about that, including the Behind the Words organization working for peace in Israel. She is also approved by CAMFT as a continued education provider for, what is MFTs?
Marriage and family
therapist. What I thought. And then the next one is an LCSW.
Licensed social worker.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
So I know I told you this. So I just unloaded kind of where I am and what's pulling my attention. I always want to give the guest that's sitting on the couch the same opportunity to do the same thing. So what's pulling your attention right now?
Well, first of all, I'm just noticing how I'm feeling, which is really interesting because I was feeling so relaxed when I came here. So I notice I feel a little nervous and I feel sad. And I think, something that really pulls my attention is how divided things are, and not just in the United States, but everywhere. Like I'm noticing, I feel so sad.
Yeah.
And I'm so aware of the kind of meanness and the shallowness of conversation, and how much people are unable to be with others who are not the same as them, or they are not the same as others, and I'm really interested in how do we create, the conditions where people can stay in a conversation beyond this very superficial, divided, polarized place.
Yeah.
And So that really is kind of the evolution of the work that I do, has brought me to a place of how do I train people to be able to understand differences, work with differences, hold differences, heal from differences, because I think that actually the things that are, maybe trigger us or are difficult for us are opportunities for us to know ourselves better and come all the way home. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
I want to stay there with you.
Okay, good. Let's stay there. Okay.
So I have a theory about this. And I think about this a lot too, obviously.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's why I wanted to come on your show, because I loved our conversation.
Oh, I did too. I did too. So I think about this. I do think about the division. There's division. There's always been division in my own family. I'm really very used to people being in conflict, but I can remember as a child watching that and going, "There's just got to be a better way. Like this can't be the only way to be in dialogue with other human beings." And flash forward today, like what I feel is the biggest divide between people. Not about where they live or income or what color of their skin. I feel it's this relationship with learning. I feel that there's two groups of people. There are those that go, "Yep, I'm a work in progress. I'm willing to be vulnerable. I'm not perfect, but I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to be checked. I'm willing to be challenged. All of these things, and they accept it as a natural order of things. It's just like that's why we're here, to grow. And then there's the other camp that's like, nope, I got this. I know this is my opinion. I don't have to tell you, anything more than this. This is where I stand. I'm not willing to take on any new information or consider any new information. This is where I am. So I think that, so when we see it play out in politics, it's like, okay, here's the smart people, and these other people in that second category are dumb. Well, that's not true at all.
No.
I don't think we're doing a good job of inviting everybody into a learning situation.
I agree.
That
totally. So, like, what I think is that, in my experience, most people would want to learn or would want support for their power, for their wholeness, for coming home. Most people would want that. A lot of environments don't provide that. And so I don't think it's actually that there's so many people who don't want things to be any different or don't want to learn. I think that the conditions that allow that to happen are really not very available. And even so, I can tell you a little bit about my own journey, because for me, where I am now comes from this experience of, I started out in New York City. I trained as a body psychotherapist in something called core energetics, which was wonderful. And I went to school there, and then I was on the faculty there. And at a certain point, I had an experience of, actually I was 52, and I had this feeling of, I have to leave. I have to go someplace and start over. And I had this really strong experience that I wanted to find a way to bring the work I was doing to large groups of people, and people that wouldn't normally have access, and not just be in a kind of world where I was seeing people one by one who happened to have the money. It was just like, no, they've got to do something different here. And I was also interested in, for me, something was happening in the work I was doing, where I would go into workshops I was leading, and the room would explode. Like explode. I mean, all at once. And it was so interesting to me. Like, it was so interesting, and I was saying, I have to pay attention to this. Something's happening here. And for me, there was something about, I'm a leader, I'm holding a space, but there's all this leadership here, and there are all these voices, and there's all this energy. And if I can hold a space where all that can happen and be allowed, and I don't have to be the one in control saying, here's the agenda, here's where you're going, here's what your healing is, that something larger than what I could possibly know could happen. So that was the birth of Radical Aliveness. And I have to say, it's so much fun, and it's so exciting, and it's incredibly deep. So I came to California, left my whole life. I convinced my husband to leave his whole life. And we moved to Los Angeles, started over again. And I think I moved here in 2008, and in September I started the Institute. So what my message was I'm doing a training program, Radical Aliveness, that is going to train people in how to be healers and how to do this kind of intensive work and body work, but be leaders in more of a horizontal way.
Yes.
And I'm welcoming all the energy, all the voices, everything, every form of expression, everything's welcome here.
Yeah.
So along starts coming like certain voices that say you're welcoming everything, but I don't feel welcomed. You say you want to hear all the voices. I don't think you're hearing my voice. You say you welcome all forms of expression. I don't think you're welcoming my expression. So I started hearing those voices, and I think because of a real spirit in me of I need to learn. I always want to learn. I want to take the information that's coming and expand.
Yeah.
I was really, really trying to understand where this needed to go. And you're talking, can I tell you an exceptional encounter?
Yeah.
Or is it too early in the show?
We will do it again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because the exceptional encounter, and I've had a number of them, but I mean, a woman came to my school. Her name is Nikki Angel. She grew up in Suriname. She was born in Curacao. She's a Mary Knoll nun, and a radical woman. Radical. I can't even tell you how radical she is. She's radical, and she's radical because she's a woman of color. But she she loved Radical Aliveness, but she said, you're missing all this information that could really make this what it needs to be. And she's someone that rather than come into a system and say, this is so fucked up and you're fucked up, and she's said, I will teach you everything I know. So that's after she graduated. I mean, I've known her for 11 years. While she was in the program, she kept trying to say to me, there are things that are missing here. It was like, I can't even tell you, as a person socialized as white in the Midwest, like there was such a gap between us. And she stayed, and I stayed. And actually, it makes me want to cry. It's like, it's been a profound experience, because we're so different. And she took me to Nairobi, and we did, we've done 2 training programs. We're done now. But the intention was, we're gonna gather people. I mean, I think in a way her intention was to get me out of my environment, where there are so many differences. I mean, you and I are different, Dee and I are different, we're all different. People have an assumption that, I don't know what people think, but sometimes I think that they think that we all think the same, or they assume that we're not as complex as we are, or because we look a certain way, this is what we believe, or this is how we feel. And she took me out of my environment, I think, to kind of really show me, you're doing body work, you're doing healing work, you're doing psychological work all of these things come from a worldview and a perspective that's completely unowned. And then you're working with people for whom this perspective is not theirs. And in order for them to get the healing from you, they have to skip parts of themselves or like swallow something that's not quite right.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I've been in this process for the past for my whole life, but I've been in this big awakening process around the work I do and how to expand it in ways that, so in Nairobi, we had people from different tribes. There's a lot of tribalism in Nairobi, like in Kenya, like in the United States, we might have racial issues. There are tribal issues there. We had women from religious communities. We had lay people. We had, people from Mexico, the United States. I mean, we had women from all over the world. And what we did for 2 years in each of these training programs was to work with the ways in which we've been socialized and like to check our assumptions, to learn how to be with each other, to understand what happens on a physical level around differences, to be able to stay around differences, to be able to learn from each other, to be able to really open our eyes and see each other and really see like the way that you learned how to be a human being is profoundly different from the way I learned how to be a human being. You come from a different culture, you have different values, and all of that stuff we learn so early. And so we have these reactions that we don't even know what they are with these powerful emotions. And so the whole process has been about how do we create a program where people can really learn all these things about themselves and about others so that we can stay together and learn from each other. I don't know if that all makes sense, but
it totally makes sense to me.
Okay.
And you see that? Yeah. Dee's over there is nodding his head. We have deeply spiritual conversations at the end of these shows, and sometimes at the beginning too. So this all makes sense. I have so many questions. I have some. I mean, I don't even know where to start because it's so exciting to me. So when you started sharing, you were talking about like being in a room with people where everyone's leadership is present, and I can feel how that feels. I could feel energy coming from you, but I've been in those experiences too, where it's like we just got there. We're flowing. We're all comfortable with each other, and like and there's appreciation and individuality and authenticness and love in this room, and it's like, and sometimes I think of the creative process like this too, like when you're working with everybody that's really good at what they do, maybe a graphic artist, a music director, like, and everybody's contributing in a way that like it's
so
their back,
creative.
and then the project takes its own
it
and it's
you.
bigger than you could ever possibly have directed that, right?
Yes.
So I love that feeling. I know that feeling. I wish everybody has the opportunity to feel that feeling, and I wish that we're doing it more, that we all are walking around with the energy, and this is why I talk about exceptional human encounters, is we're all walking around with that energy to make that happen on a daily basis. Like I could say something, you could get goosebumps, and we'd be like, we're vibing there. But backing up, yes, we are all very different. I talk about lenses a lot. Like I'm seeing this through my own experience, my lens. That's all I can kind of comment on. It's just my lens. I'm aware that I have a lens. It might as well be rose-colored glasses. You know?
And that's everybody's got that, right? That's what I'm calling socialization or perceptual filter. Everybody has a lens. And we happen to live in a very individualistic society. And then there are we cultures, and that's also, the values are very different. So
and your lens, so you can assume that you know somebody's lens because you've seen it, that you've seen them operate from that point of view, right? But then something happens and they're triggered, something's coming up, or it feels like trauma, it's revisiting something that hurt them, and they might put a totally different lens on that you've never experienced, and you're coming from a place of like, well, but I know them from this, and it's like, no, they're in a different zone right now.
Yeah.
So what does that work look like? I mean, so to get to here to include everybody's lens, where do you get to that first part of that story where all of that leadership is there? Like, what does that look like on the individual level of is it creating a space where everybody can communicate from a place of?
Well, I actually, I mean, so I think it takes a lot in a certain way, which is why I have this training program, and the training program has been evolving with me. In your training program, when people commit to go through the entire program at the Institute, they're 4 years. They live somewhere else in parts of they come 5 times a year and they stay immersed for 4 days, and we're all together and we do this training. So it's like a college, there's a freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. But I think that in the training program, or let's say if I was just at Esalen doing a workshop, there's a lot of stuff that, at this point I know about. So for instance, at this particular workshop, well, there's dominant culture, there are people who are not part of the dominant culture, and that's everywhere, right? And if dominant culture doesn't own its values, if the people who have the power to set the norms and to say what's normal, what's not normal, what our values are, if they don't own it, then most definitely people get marginalized and left out. So Radical Aliveness wants us to be able to own, here are the values, here's what we're doing. I know that I don't know everything. I know that I don't see certain things. So I'm honoring multiple perspectives. I'm inviting people to know that I have a worldview and that your worldview may be very different from mine. I think there's certain things that you can do as a leader that signal to the people that you're with, there's not one way of looking at things. I know that I may not be seeing something. I welcome you to let me know when I don't see something. I'm willing to expand. I know that you know things I don't know. I can't possibly know everything. Even in just sharing that, Anne, I can see how that diffuses. So if something that diffuses the situation, or not diffuses, that makes it more comfortable for sharing to happen. So and let me elaborate this because I'm totally not on my point yet. I can see, if I was to share, I don't see everything. If I'm leading, and I facilitate small groups and things, if I'm leading something and I say, I don't know all of this, I'm willing for you to correct me or tell me. So when something comes up for somebody, when I've said something that's now upsetting them, they're not on the defense because I've just said all of that. It's easier for them to kind of share, well, here's what you're missing, right? Yeah. So it's creating safety in dialogue, I would say, but more, it's honoring it's more comfort, I guess, that. I don't know if I'm totally getting to my point, but you are, because I think that as a leader, so what I say about Radical Aliveness, it's a non-expert model. And by that I mean, I don't think that there is a way that is universal that speaks to everyone and that you can use in the same way wherever you go in the world, I think that's a very universalist, individualistic way of thinking. We happen to have been socialized in that.
Yeah.
We're supposed to be expert. This is a very countercultural idea to say, no, I'm not an expert.
I like, so I talk about before it gets weird conversations.
Okay, are we about to get weird?
No, but this is what we're talking about. The kind of language that you just shared and that it sounds like you use when you're facilitating this learning is, okay, I'm going to give all these disclaimers because it is going to get weird. Okay, we're humans. We have different lenses. We have different experiences. Yeah. It's going to get messy. Yeah. Just simply by being together for however long, we are going to come up against stuff. Yeah. So I'm willing to have a before it gets weird conversation, and I'm a big advocate of that in dating and personal relationships because it's like, okay, I'm feeling this. I'm just going to say it. It never feels right. It never gets more comfortable. It's always still vulnerable, but you do feel better on the other side of that. And I also believe, and this is why I really like what you're doing, is there's so much noise, there's so much distraction, and if we want our human experience to be enriched and feel amazing, like we have to be willing to give people the tools that they need to be successful with us, and that is dialogue. That is like, look, this is what I know about myself, and this works and this doesn't, and it is a lot of before it gets weird conversations, just to go, I want you to be successful with me, and I don't want us to reach this point of anger or sadness, whatever it is, but we will, we'll get there. But the more we share prior to those moments, I think we'll be better off.
Yeah, and that's, I would say in my role, I would call those agreements. Mm-hmm. So in a group or in a school or in any place that you're working, that set up certain agreements so that we're all on the same page and we can be called back to the agreements that we've made together. So for instance, in Radical Aliveness, we have 5 principles and we operate from those principles. The principles are knowing I don't know, so being willing to be changed, honoring multiple perspectives, saying yes to everything,
That's a tough one.
Cultivating a non-shaming attitude and heart. And
they get harder as they go. 4, I was like, ooh, that's a tough one. Saying
yes to everything is kind of a difficult one because people think it means condoning bad behavior. No, it's about, like, for me, saying yes to everything is a yes to being willing to feel everything that I need to feel in order to stay to the best of my ability here with someone, with you, with the world, and be able to make choices from that place. Because ultimately, I want the people who do this work to feel very empowered, to be able to make choices. I'm not interested, I can feel where I'm getting ready to go, and I feel like I gotta control myself. But I feel like psychology sometimes makes people small. It's like the idea that I don't feel like people are small. I'm sorry. I've been all over the world. I see, first of all, I think that being a human being is traumatic. Just being a human being is traumatic. We're born for trauma. We're born for trauma. If we were not born for trauma, we would all be dead. So people are living, thriving, surviving through the most intense circumstances. And so I really believe that people are very powerful. The work I want to do with people is about believing in that power. I think there are people that you have to be careful with, definitely, but mostly most people have a tremendous amount of resilience and ability to go through things. So the work I do is very, I don't want to say I'm not careful, because I think that I really am, and I try and create a very safe environment. But it's wild. It's wild. And I think that wildness is so much fun
Yeah.
and so amazing, because people go places that I have no idea where we're going. When I step into a workshop, when I step into a room, I don't know where we're going. And we go somewhere together, and because of the field that's created, so much comes out in the open that would never come out in the open if you were staying under control.
Yeah.
So I'm a big advocate of, okay, let's tolerate, like, my work for maybe the whole time I've been doing the Radical Aliveness Institute is, what is the structure that you need that doesn't constrain the wildness in any way? And that's been a long process to find.
Yeah.
And I think I'm pretty close to being there with the help of Nikki.
You found your personal one, or you found what works in that group?
What works in the training program, not to kill the aliveness, the chaos, the freedom, the whatever happens in those rooms, which is so profound for me, because it's not coming from a single viewpoint that says this is where we're going. It's saying we're going to stand here and life is taking us somewhere. And where that is really something none of us know. So let's go together with these agreements.
I love it. So this is a good.
You should come to one.
I know. I want to.
You'll have fun. You should come too, Dee.
I want to. I mean, so there, outside of the big program, there are other workshops like you could go.
Oh yeah, there's like people doing this work. I mean, I don't know how many graduates we have by now, but there are people doing the work. Leading things. And actually one of the things I was interested in when I came out here was, how do you take this powerful work and apply it to the world? So people are doing this work, in communities. People are doing this work in. There have been a couple of ministers who are now like doing it,
That's
people
nice to hear.
In education and, all sort of rehabs. I work in Israel. I'm getting ready to go back there in November and work with Palestinians and Jews and holding a space like this. And it's profound.
In your bio, you mentioned flexibility and sensitivity, and I was like, yes, I know how important that is. Can you talk a little bit about that, like why those principles are so important for this work, or for everybody to have somewhat of a relationship with? Yeah,
because it's kind of like what you were saying before when we started at the very beginning about, you were saying there are people who don't want to learn. So for me, I think leadership, if you're going to be in a position of power, that it's really important how you hold your power and what you know about your power and how you're owning it. And if you're owning it in a way that says, I know I don't know, for me, that makes you a much safer leader. I know a lot. I want to say I know a lot. I have a lot of wisdom. I have a lot of skills. I'm not disowning the things that I know. I know a lot. I'm a powerful leader. But I also know that I don't know. So the flexibility is, if I'm with you and you've come to me, I have to be able to not say, here's the work I do, it looks like this is where we're going, this is the agenda, here's what you do to get there. If I do that, I've already wiped out the possibility of knowing so much about you, your culture, your background, something so much larger. And so for me, the flexibility and sensitivity is about, I have all these skills and tools, but the skills and tools and techniques are not driving the process. The skills, tools, and techniques are being used with flexibility and sensitivity and creativity in response to who I'm meeting. So I can't do the same thing with every single person. I can't learn a technique. I started out in body psychotherapy and say, go around the world, and if you do this with every person around the world, it's going to work the same. No, it's not. I mean, you might get this, you might think you're doing great work. My experience is, the more I've learned about this, what gets silenced, what people have to skip, what people don't bring forth when you are working from a perspective that says, here's the technique, here's the theory, I'm going to use it on you, and this is where we're going. First of all, the techniques and theory have a worldview.
Yeah.
And there are so many worldviews, and there are so many cultures, and there are so many differences. So it's for me like really needing to be humble in the idea that we each have such a narrow perceptual filter, a lens that we're seeing through, and how do we like keep knowing that and keep finding out more about our own lens as we come in contact with differences. Yeah. Because the differences will help us see more about ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much going on here because I'm excited. I'm excited that you exist in the world and this work is being done. And I wonder, so to be this open, to put yourself in this situation where you are going to lead and you're going to be open to hearing different worldviews, is there things that you do to prep to be in that space, so you're not carrying extra stuff or?
Well, you know, what I was going to say is, I think the training in certain ways is the thing about the non-shaming heart or the non-shaming attitude. So that is comprised of two parts. It's comprised of awareness and it's comprised of feeling. And so what I want to say is, I don't think it's easy for people, in my experience. Most people have a hard time receiving the kind of pushback or feedback in ways that allow like new information to come forth, because people start feeling threatened, or they get scared, or they feel like something's going to be seen about them, or exposed. And so a lot of the work I'm doing is wanting to train leaders actually who can do that. So I mean, I think you'd be shocked if you ever saw me in a room, because I mean, what comes forth what comes forth is sometimes so intense. And my yes to everything is, you know, you're a human being, bring it on. There's nothing you can do that's not human. If I can say yes to this, if I can allow it, you know, to come, then we're going to go someplace very profound, and we're all going to find out more. So that, for me, has taken a lot of willingness to feel my own deep feelings, my feelings of fear, my feelings of deep pain. Fear has been a big one for me, but you know, there's a lot of deep feelings that I've you know been willing to feel. So if somebody, you know, is bringing something to me now, you know, most of the time it's very rare I get triggered. It's very rare.
So what I'm hearing is, it's not I have to put myself in this position to be with people. It's more whatever I have, whatever I'm carrying, I'm going to offer it up and share. Like I'm going to deal with it, and I'm going to be okay with it. It's not like, oh, let's put the blinder. It's not like, you know, I have to be a certain way to step in this room.
No, because I'm going to keep. You're talking about learning. I mean, really, I could cry again.
There's tissues right behind you. Just
it's like the experience of like. I mean, I was always on a path, but the experience of having my eyes opened in a certain way has been so profound. And so I want my eyes to be opened for the rest of my life. I hope on the day I die that before I close my eyes, I'm opening them. I want my eyes to be opened. And if I can't tolerate finding out new things all the time, I think we're so complex, 100 years, if I live that long, or my recent one is I'm going to live to 94. I think there's so much to find out about myself, about you, about the world, and I'm interested in expanding my identity more and more and more and more and more. So for me, that's where I want to go.
I feel that. I can relate to that. You used the phrase a couple times, coming home. You want to talk about that? I mean, we're right there, and it feels like we're in a very spiritual moment. So let's talk about, what does that mean to you?
To me, coming home means getting all the way present in who I am, in where I've come from, in what I learned, in not having to deny any part of myself in order to expand. So it's like everything that has happened to me, everything that I've been through, everything that I learned, that's all part of me, and I don't have to make any of it wrong. I'm not interested in things being wrong. I don't think things are wrong. I think we have an opportunity to learn, like you said. I think that people are powerful. So coming home for me means getting to a place, we could say as an adult, where we can allow all of our experience, all of our energy, all of our feelings to be present in a way so that we can actually show up in the here and now, in the here and now, and make choices about how to navigate without being stuck back in some kind of historical place. That's coming home.
So for me, how I would interpret that is looking at every moment of your life as just part of the journey that it's significant.
Yeah, and I want to say that can sound really flip. That can sound easy coming from, someone who looks like me. And I know that there are things that I am not experiencing, that there are people in this world who are going through things that are so hard and difficult every single day. And so I don't want to sound flip. I want to say it's not a naive statement. It's not like, woo-hoo, You can learn from everything. Terrible things happen. And terrible things are happening to people. And my experience is that when people are held in a certain way, that those terrible things are part of our strength and our power when there's a place where people have the opportunity to have them held in ways that they can find the wisdom in them. And many people don't need that holding. You see it already out in the world. People are bringing their gifts and their wisdom, and they're living terrible circumstances. So sometimes I think people in really difficult circumstances are having a lot of spiritual development just by virtue of having to survive what they're surviving, Yeah.
D. We've got a lot of nodding heads going on in the studio. Okay.
How are you doing?
I'm good. No, I'm here. I'm here with you.
Okay.
I'm here with you. I feel the same way I felt when I talked to you the first time, which is this is exactly the conversation I'm supposed to be having in this moment right now. And I don't need to say anything more than that. This is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing right now. And that's great. Let's go. So you gave an example of exceptional human encounter. What does the phrase mean to you when I say that? what if you had to define what an exceptional human encounter is? What would you say?
Well, the first word that comes to me is generosity. So, like, it's interesting, you know, there are, like, if I think about, there's a kind of theme in my life of certain people who just stand beside me or behind me and are willing to give me, like, devotion. You know, people get devoted, but it's not about me. Do you know what I mean? It's about, like, Nikki, or I have this friend Mark Fairfield.
I
like
know Mark.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Mark.
that's how we're
So
here.
it's
And
like
Steve.
people who, there's a quality in them of, I want to give everything I've got. And, you know, when you run into those people, there's a feeling of, I don't know, devotion, it's something so beyond what I can imagine. Sometimes it doesn't feel completely, well, it doesn't feel personal. It feels like it's about being with someone who is joining you on a vision. Yeah, something like that.
I can, yes. So I dream in this way. I think this is the motivation for doing this show, but there's something magical when you find the flow of life with other people that are just, they're there with you. You just know, like, they're there. They're not, it's not a good and bad. It's not a labeling of, like, positive. They're just there.
And
like,
there's a quality, like, I think of the exceptional encounter or whatever you're calling it, that it feels like you're going somewhere, right? Like if I say yes to this relationship, if I say yes to this person, there's somewhere we're going that's so beyond what either of us could know.
It's flowy for me. It's like, it's leveling up, but it's more, it's like, if you had to illustrate it, it's light, it's color, it's like, it's something bigger than you. You can't define it.
No, you
can't define it. And it's weird that we put so much emphasis on intimate relationships and not on this, like tribal, you know, find your tribe kind of thing that seems to be in many ways what we all want. We want to feel loved, seen, and heard. We want to be able to reflect with each other, you know, love on each other, feel safety, but also feel that you just leveled up. You just leveled me up. Like what you just said, I totally needed to hear that.
And I want the tribe to be really big.
Yeah.
You know, so what I'm saying is the tribe doesn't all have to think like me. The tribe doesn't have to be like me. The tribe doesn't have to, I want a really big tribe, and I want people to learn how to tolerate the feelings that come up when the tribe gets really big.
I hope that's where I hope we're at a point in history that there are small tribes being gathered by people like you that that are growing and growing, but then we get to combine them even further. Like there's different trainings and organizations and energies that are happening, and we have kind of a segregated sort of tribal thing going on, but if we could bring them all together, that's awesome. Like that would be.
That's what you're trying to do.
Right? Well, I do think I want to see something like that in my lifetime. I mean, I want to experience that. I want to have a role in that. I don't care what the role is.
Yeah.
I know how that feels. I know I've been in group dynamics and I've felt that, and I think trying to find a way where you feel that more often in your day, and just the routine of your day is definitely something that I want to participate in.
Yeah.
And help other people and invite people, you know, yeah. That's it. Right? Yeah, that's it. So yes, I love what you're doing. I have to come. Dee, we have to go together.
I think you should both come to a workshop. You would have so much fun.
I think so.
If you're willing to feel a whole bunch.
I'm willing to feel. I'm definitely.
You don't have to do anything you don't want to do, but if you step in the room, stuff's going to happen.
Yeah. You just have to let that happen, huh?
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to get all the information and we'll share that with people
Thank
too,
you.
so they know how they can
Yeah,
participate.
thank you for inviting me. I feel really good. Like this was fun.
This was good.
Yes.
I've been wanting to meet you for so long. I think
Thank you.
Mark was in my first season of shows.
He was?
Yeah. So when I was at LA Talk Radio, and then Steve was just here in this. Yeah. Did you meet Steve? Hug? Did we hug? Did that happen this season or last season? Oh, I think it was last. Yeah. It was. I know when it was. So, and I think, and I've known about you and I've known about the work. And when Steve reminded me, he's like, but don't reach out to her right now. She's traveling. She's got this big thing going on. So I just waited. And now we're here.
It was fun.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So we get to do one more thing
Okay,
together.
good. I'm excited. Let's do one more thing
all right,
together.
So all about learning. We've talked about it several times in our conversation. So I like to issue a social challenge of the week, just an invite for someone to have a different experience, to learn on their own. Nobody's watching them or monitoring them. It's totally their experience. And based on what I shared at the beginning of the show, and it's still relevant with our conversation, I felt like the social challenge this week would be just to think about who your story, who your life has been safe with, who sharing your life with, you've really felt their energy and support around you're protecting my story and my love and who I am, and just reaching out, making a list. I hope that list is long, but however long or short, making a list and actually reaching out to them and saying thank you.
Yeah, I love that. That's great.
Yeah. You like that? Do you have anything to?
Well, I was thinking of a different social challenge.
Okay.
Or whatever you call it. Okay, can we have two?
Yeah, we can have two.
So what I want people to do is when, let's say there's some big issue in the world that they're just horrified by, whatever it is, in the news, and they're horrified by it, and they immediately go to all these thoughts. And they, condemn the people and, all the way we do that, okay? That I want people, when they hear that story, to just notice their sensations in their body, to let go of all thoughts, let go of the story, let go of even feelings, just stay with the sensations and see what happens when they tolerate their sensations. Because I think one of the things that gets in the way of us being able to go beyond these superficial and very polarized conversations is people cannot tolerate the sensations they need to tolerate in their body to stay.
So I want to rephrase that a little bit so everybody's with me, because I kind of think I know what you're talking about, but I'm gonna make sure, I'm gonna check in.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, so you saw something in the news. It was very traumatizing. You're ready to put an angry post out, or or to do something,
and to probably demonize the people that it's about.
Yeah. So little shame, little call out, and and you're saying, okay, you've experienced that. Feel it, experience it, and then try to put it aside and pay attention to what's happening in your body. Like where is it? Like maybe I'm sometimes like this, like I get the stress, and my shoulders are up, or maybe it's a stomach ache or something. So spend time with that and tolerate it.
Yeah.
So it's not, I have a stomach ache, I need to take Pepto-Bismol.
Nope.
It's not trying to to make that feeling go away. It's like, can we say love on that experience, or can we
I'm going to stay with that experience and not label it and not take it to stories that are familiar. I'm just going to stay with the sensation, because in a certain way we have to break these habitual ways of jumping to conclusions that just keep making us stay in the same story over and over again. So tolerate your sensations.
And like for any length of time, because I think this is radical. This is a radical social challenge. If you haven't done something like this, I would say it's pretty radical, right? If you've never done anything like this,
do it as long as you can do it. Do it for 5 minutes,
and then simply can you close that?
Well,
with just saying, I
yes,
did that.
And then you can, if you want, you can close your eyes and say, and where does this take me in my history? Like, what's this remind me of?
That's a powerful. I think that was what we needed to put that social challenge out. Where does it take me in this experience? Where does it take me in my history?
Yeah.
I love it. What should we call this challenge?
Expansion, the expansion challenge, the break the habitual thinking challenge, the something like that.
Okay. Well, we have an expansion challenge and we have a simple gratitude challenge.
I love that.
Yeah, we can't do that enough, I think.
No.
All right. We have 2 good challenges.
Okay.
Bonus challenge, big one too. I love it. Well, this is amazing.
Thank you. I can't believe that we're like exactly 1 hour. That was amazing.
I know. It goes like this,
Boom.
right?
Boom. Yeah. Boom.
All right, we will definitely be sharing how you can get and learn about the Institute and sign up for workshops and things, anything. We'll talk to her afterwards, see if there's any big events coming up, and we'll share that as well.
Yeah.
I totally appreciated you and having this conversation.
Much fun with you.
I hope it was a little break. You got to be in your hometown for a little bit because I know you're traveling a lot.
Yeah.
So I hope this felt nice.
Thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for accepting the invite.
Yeah, you're a Midwestern girl.
Yes.
Yeah.
It happens a lot. We kind of find each other, and then it's happened a lot that we've discovered. I've discovered another guest that is from the Midwest, and we didn't know until we sat down here. But it happens. Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dee.
I wish I had a mirror sometimes so I can just get your reaction, so I can share with everybody. Well, that does bring us to another edition or end of another Relatable. And as always, I just want you to think about, I think Anne gave us some really good information about how we can have more and such exceptional human encounters. We have to learn, we have to do a little work, but if the work is fun and learning and you're getting to experience yourself in a different way, it's so worth it. So I just leave with the same thing that we always say. What are you doing today to make an exceptional encounter happen? See you next week.
Bye.